Mitch Chan, I'm here. Thanks for joining me today for the Security News Update. So let's see. This week in the video blogs, there's two new video blogs for defense clients. One talking about, so you think since you have no CUI, you don't have to comply with CMMC. That is definitely a false. You do. And if you listen to that 5-minute video, you'll learn why. And the other is that if you think you master the 800-171 or 800-171A checklist, that you're also compliant with CMMC. You're not either. So that's another 5-minute video. So for defense contractors, I would definitely recommend watching those two videos. In the seeing is not believing, definitely department. This is interesting, and for those of you who are watching as opposed to listening, I'm going to try to share something here. So you can see this fake U.S. passport for Communist China President Xi. He doesn't have a U.S. passport, I don't think. But what we're saying is that the AI software now is sufficiently good that it can do a pretty reasonable replica of whatever it is you want. So then I ran it through a number of the so-called, I say so-called because they don't work, none of them, they all failed, AI image detection software packages. All of them failed. None of them thought that this was a fake, when in fact, we know for a fact from the person who created it that it is a fake. So, it's a real challenge. You got to look for telltale clues. You got to look stuff out of context. You got to verify, using other verification mechanisms. But you definitely can't count on being able to know that just because you see a picture of it. And this came from Nano Banana, so that's a Google product, really cheap. So, the bar is now very low. In the AI alerts department, where are we at with the threat of federal preemption of state AI laws? Looks like it's off the board for right now. Remember earlier this year, they tried to shove it inside the one big beautiful bill. That failed. Now they tried to shove it inside the National Defense Authorization Act. It appears that failed. But the problem is that there's a lot of money involved here. And, if I wasn't polite, which I'm not always, I would call them bribes. Other people would call them campaign donations. But the big AI companies are willing to spend tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars trying to convince senators and congresspeople that federal preemption of state AI laws is a good thing. And that if there was a federal AI law, it would be totally toothless and totally meaningless, which is why the states have done what they've done. The more states that enact AI laws, the harder it's going to be to enact a federal law because of that weak thing that the lobbyists who will be throwing millions and millions of dollars at it to try to get it killed or at least neutered. So we shall see what happens there, but it looks like, at least for the moment, it's not going to happen. OpenAI's AI code generator tool now can load malware every time someone uses it, the code that's generated. So, I think that's going to be an interesting challenge. And I do think that people are going to have to be on the alert to try to understand what's going on. In the CMMC section, I would say, a couple of things. I'm just going to say pick one of them, which is what I do every week. What's the impact of not getting your FCI certification, which compared to your CUI, your CMMC level 2 certification is a lot simpler, but still takes some work and documentation in case the nice friends at the DoD come out and audit you. But one particular company was asked by their customer whether they had their CMMC level 1, and they didn't. It did take them 3 months to get that done, and they lost the contract work which they would have done during those 3 months. Luckily, apparently, they got the business back, so they didn't lose it forever. They just lost 3 months worth. That cost them $400,000. So kind of lesson learned for these guys. If you ignore the rules, um, you're going to be in trouble. And I think we're going to wind up seeing more and more of this kind of story come out as CMMC continues to roll out. In the important issues department, I just read an estimate, which kind of blew my mind, that there's going to be 75 billion, not million, billion internet-connected devices worldwide by the end of the year. Most of those have really crappy security. What that means is that the bad guys are going to come in by way of those devices that have really bad security and have credentials embedded in them to do whatever it is they do. We're calling those non-human identities. And right now, let's say I had a internet-connected smart whatever refrigerator, and it had to log in to whatever. It had to log into my Wi-Fi, had to log into my Google account, had to log into my email, and I just used my regular email, let's say, and it got compromised. Well, what I know is my email got compromised, but I don't know how or where it got compromised. I don't know what to change the password of. And also, of course, if it does get compromised, then all these other devices that are using that identity need to have their user ID and password changed as well. So we're going to start talking about the need to create identities for these non-humans because it's the only way we can track what's going on. And in business, that is going to become even more important because people are going to use their corporate, let's say Active Directory account, and that gets compromised. That presents much bigger problems. As countries battle encryption, companies are leaving the country. France has been really aggressive about requiring backdoors and encryption. They went after an open source project, which is a really weird target because they don't have any money. And they're probably just going to, and maybe that's what the France thought, that they would just fold and go do it. It's the Graphene project, and they said, F you, we're just going to leave the country. Have a nice day. And I know other companies have said similar things. Apple has said that to England. Let's see who else. Signal has said that to the EU. So, we're going to see it's going to be a mix, right? Because people like money and they don't want to lose the revenue. But if they lose their integrity, then they lose customers. So they're between a rock and a hard place. But Graphene has now left France and said, sorry, not going to play. There's a good article in Wired this week on digital OPSEC, or operational security for teenagers. It's a long read, because many Wired articles are a long read. But, practicing good operational security is the thing that keeps your teenagers safe. And, I really encourage everybody who has teenagers that you should read it, and you should get your teen to read it. And then you should continue to remind them of, what are good cyber hygiene practices, because, we see enough stories of bad things happening that, hoping that it's not going to happen to you is probably not a good strategy. Asahi Group Holdings, it's a beer and other beverages company in Japan. They said that they lost the data on 2 million people in the breaches department, and it crippled 30 factories. The attack happens in September, and they're still dealing with it, so it takes a long time. When is 4,500 equal to 33 million? Well, when you either don't know what you're doing, or you're lying, or I don't know what. But Korea's version of Amazon, which I'm going to pronounce Coupang, and I don't know if that's the correct pronunciation, but hopefully it's close, initially said that a cyber attack that they had affected 4,500 customers. Now they're saying it affected 33 million, which is about 65% of the country. And the government's not terribly pleased. We'll see what they actually do, whether what they do is a slap on the wrist or whether it is meaningful, don't know yet. But this is going to be expensive, and they do not have enough cyber insurance, so this is going to come out of the bottom line. SBOMs, or software bills of material, is an action that the feds have been working on for about 4 years now, which is to get software makers to let them know what software modules are in a particular product that the feds are buying. And the reason why they want to do that is if that product is compromised, like we've seen before, and you don't know that some software you're using is using that product, and you can't work to mitigate the results, or you can't figure out what you need to update. So they just released an updated version of the guidelines, they being NIST, which is definitely better and more constructive. But if you sell to the public sector, state or federal, you better be working on your software bills of material solution, and it has to be in a machine readable format. It's an XML format. So, think about that. And of course, if you need assistance, please let us know. China, our favorite spy organization. We heard about a while back them hacking the big phone companies, AT&T and Verizon, as an internet provider. But the story is getting more concerning. The FBI says that China hacked at least 200 companies, including Comcast and a company you've never heard of, but they have a big footprint, which is Digital Realty Trust. And they run data centers for people like Amazon and many others. So the other thing the FBI said was that the Chinese were inside these companies for about 5 years. So if you look at the kind of footprint that companies like Amazon and Comcast have, and you look at the length of time it's involved, they got a lot of data. I mean, a lot of data. And most of these 200 companies, we don't know who they are yet. So we don't know how much data is involved. And then another China story. China keeps making noises about taking over Taiwan. One of the challenges that all authoritarian governments have, and I would put that, there's a lot of countries that fall in that category, of course. And even countries that aren't traditionally authoritarian, but definitely do want to know what's going on, which includes ours, is it's really hard to block satellite internet. So some Chinese researchers did a study, and they figured out that they could launch about 1,000 to 2,000 drones, depending on the size of the area they want to disable. And that would be enough to kill off Starlink, which is the biggest, obviously, satellite internet provider. Whether Starlink is thinking about things to mitigate that or not, I don't know. But it's interesting. China has already demonstrated their ability to sever our most armored undersea cables. So this would be the last link. And as we've seen in Ukraine, when their internet doesn't work, it really affects the warfighting. So interesting challenge, and obviously China and probably other countries are looking at that too. Microsoft Teams adds a feature which I call surveillance. It's off by default, but of course your company could turn it on, which is to provide location information about where you are when you're on a Teams call or in the Teams application. This is so they claim, which I don't believe for a minute, that this is so people who want to meet you in real life can find you. Well, that's pretty simple. Hey, Mitch, where are you? Done. I don't need fancy software to do that. On the other hand, if you're a company and you're worried about that the employees are sitting at the beach taking a Teams call, that might be of interest to you. So that's being rolled out now. You'll have to see whether your company is turning it on or not. CISA still has no director. It looks like there was a plan to try to hide it inside the National Defense Authorization Act. That apparently failed, given other things that Congress needs to do this year. It's highly unlikely they're going to take that up, which means that back in January, when Congress reconvenes, the president will need to resubmit a new application for a CISA director. And this really has nothing to do with whether this guy is a good guy or a bad guy. It has to do with the fact that CISA is refusing to release the unclassified report talking about that telecom hack I was just talking about a minute ago, because I am sure that it's going to be very embarrassing to the telecom providers, and maybe the government just hasn't been telling us the whole truth. So don't know. And going back to our friends in Japan, I don't know how to pronounce this, but that beer company, I'll just call it that, they detected the breach at 7 o'clock in the morning Japan time. and within 4 hours, they had initiated network isolation. But by that time, the game was completely over. They were totally infected, and they've been working since then. You need to be able to detect and mitigate, which means isolate, attacks in minutes, if not seconds. There's plenty of software out there that will help you do that. We sell some of that. If you are not thinking about that, not looking about that, not doing that, you should be. And if you need help with that, we'd be happy to assist you. So with that, until that bit of happiness, until next time, thanks for listening, and stay safe, and thanks for listening.